Well, good evening, everyone, and it's lovely to be back with you again for a Wednesday evening reflection. I hope you've been enjoying our Sunday morning services of worship, trying to keep us all connected with each other. It was a great delight for me on Sunday to sit in my own home with my family and worship together. When Casala and Brian and others, of course, in the church family were leading us in worship. So thank you very much for that, Brian, Casala, and the rest of the team. We've decided to keep our Wednesday reflections going through this period, short reflections led by myself and Brian and Stu and Casala. So tonight is the first of those reflections. I think the first thing that I want to say in this time for me, I've been awakening to a new sense of God's love and His grace and His presence in my own life. Maybe it's just to do with slowing down, maybe it's to do with my need, maybe it's to do with the fact that we are in challenging times. But I wonder, does the good news, the gospel as we would call it, bring us joy or at least peace? Or does it leave us in a state of perpetual nervousness regarding our salvation and whether we could ever be good enough to receive God's love? There's a story about a 92-year-old priest who was highly regarded in his local community for his holiness. He was also a member of the local Rotary Club, and when it met, he would always be the first one there. He would sit in his usual seat and he would enjoy the fellowship of his friends. But one day, the priest disappeared. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The townsfolk looked for him everywhere, but to no avail. But the following month, when the Rotary Club met, he was there as usual, sitting in the corner in his same seat. "Father," everyone cried, "where have you been?" "I just served a 30-day sentence in prison," he said. "In prison?" they cried. "Father, you couldn't hurt a fly. What happened?" "Well, it's a long story," said the priest, "but briefly, this is what happened. I bought a train ticket to go to another city to see a friend. I was standing on the platform waiting for the train to arrive when a stunningly beautiful woman appears on the arm of a policeman. She looked at me, turned to the cop and said, 'He did it. I'm certain he's the one who did it.' Well, to tell you the truth, I was so flattered I pleaded guilty." We will never be good enough to earn God's favour. But when grace gets hold of us, a bit like the honest priest, we discover a whole new reality about God and His favour towards us. You see, there is nothing we can hide of ourselves that will surprise or disappoint God. None of our paradoxes or shadows can surprise Him one little bit. And to live by grace means to acknowledge my whole life, both the light and the dark sides. I want to quote from a book that I've been revisiting over these past weeks by Brennan Manning. Let me read this to you. "All that is good is ours, not by right, but by the sheer bounty of a gracious God. While there is much we have earned, our degree or a salary, our home and garden, a Miller Lite and a good night's sleep, all this is possible only because we have been given so much. Life itself, eyes to see and hands to touch, a mind to shape ideas and a heart to beat with love. We have been given God in our souls and Christ in our flesh. We have the power to believe where others deny, to hope where others despair, to love where others hurt. This and so much more is a sheer gift. It is not a reward for our faithfulness, our generous disposition, or our heroic life of prayer. Even our fidelity is a gift. If we but turn to God, said St. Augustine, that itself is a gift of God. My deepest awareness of myself is that I am deeply loved by Jesus Christ, and I have done nothing to earn it or deserve it. Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, "For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, so that no one can boast." Of course, there is a but involved here. And I was looking the other day at a wonderful painting, a startlingly original treatment of the conversion of St. Paul by an artist called Hyatt Moore. We hope to have the image for you, but we're trying to get permission to show the image. If not, look it up, Google it. It's a wonderful image of Paul's conversion on his way, of course, to persecute followers of Jesus Christ. Saul on his knees with this amazing shaft of light coming down that obliterates him and yet also shows a sense of the great love and power of God towards him. So if we haven't got it here, then do look it up and do Google it and even just meditate on it for a while. Saul's misdirected devotion would eventually bring him to his knees in submission to God. Perhaps we weren't blinded whilst travelling. Perhaps the work of Jesus in our lives was quieter and calmer and progressive. But what matters most is that we seek him and what he has to offer. Bread for the journey, light in our darkness, and hope for our future. C.S. Lewis says in The Four Loves, grace substitutes a full, childlike and delighted acceptance of our need, a joy in total dependence. The good man is sorry for the sins that have increased his need. He is not entirely sorry for the fresh need they have produced. Humble submission to God means, I believe, that he will press into our lives even further. And remarkably, a new joy begins to well up from within us that has little to do with us and more to do with the enlarged presence of our Lord Jesus Christ. There is little doubt that at the moment life feels fragile and we are neither immune from the virus nor unaffected by the crisis. There will be days when the situation can take a heavy toll on our hearts, on our minds and our psychology. Not being able to control our circumstances seems to be an uncomfortable place to sit. But you know something? I believe it could be the defining place of personal transformation into joy for many of us. It could be the time when the grace of God received on our knees brings rest for our souls, food for the journey, and an emerging joy that surpasses these challenging times. Let me remind you of a few verses from Psalm 73. Whom have I in heaven but you? And earth has nothing I desire besides you. My heart and my flesh may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. I'm going to be preaching on Sunday, and we're going to be looking at that wonderful passage of Jesus making himself known on the Emmaus Road to followers of his. We're going to look a little bit more deeply around the authentic Christian lifestyle and what that means for us as we move forward and experience more of the presence and love and unremitting, generous nature of God. Amen.